Hi, this is Bobby, and this is my review of Black Swan, directed by Darren Aronofsky, starring Mila Kunis, Natalie Portman, Vincent Cassell, and Barbara Hershey. I think the first film after Aronofsky's Wrestler, this is quite a departure for him, in consideration of the characters he's using here. Usually his films are used with weakened characters who've lost their way in life, from the drug dealers in Requiem for a Dream to Randy the Ram Robinson. It's a common theme in his work that the main characters are really weakened in their position in life at the moment. However, here he's trying to establish a different central dynamic, and the weakened character is a secondary character, Beth, the prima ballerina, played by Winona Ryder, who will soon be retiring. Many are going to say that Ryder's character is vastly unimportant because she has so little screen time, but just may show that Aronofsky cannot separate himself from his long-held familiar themes. In terms of story, Aronofsky's film centers on Nina, a ballerina at this company, who is auditioning for Swan Lake. The director, Leroy, wants to cast the same person as the Black Swan and the White Swan. So with many options, he eventually chooses Nina, despite the fact that that he has better candidates performing the Black Swan, but really does think that the Nina performs the best White Swan. But really goes with her because he eventually gets evidence, that she can perform the Black Swan and she can be aggressive, despite her need for perfection. Apparently, Lily is filling for another ballerina played by Mila Kunis, and so Nina is not very familiar around her nor comfortable. Nina's shy, she's reserved, she's committed to her art, and extremely focused, who has no concept for understanding of Lily's offbeat sense of humor. Her directness, her strange and sudden attempt at friendship, so the conflicting attitudes, if nothing else, is evidence of arising problems. One of the main complaints of the film is how unfit a protagonist Nina is. As a shy, reserved character living at home with a mother played by Barbara Hershey, who creates abstract and nearly identical portraits in form, and is also intrusive, Lily seems to have the perfect arsenal to bring the Black Swan out of her system. If the Black Swan is supposed to be emotionally crippled and vulnerable, it seems strange that Nina fails in this regard, actually succeeds at portraying the White Swan, but not the Black Swan. Even stranger, though, is how Lily succeeds at portraying the Black Swan better, even though she would naturally seem as better suited for the Black Swan. I'm sorry, she portrays the Black Swan better, but it would seem that she would be better suited to portray the White Swan, considering how sweet-tempered she is. Another oddity is how different Nina is compared to all of Aronofsky's other characters, as I mentioned above. They all seem extrovert and display more overt emotions than Nina. Maybe this adds to the mystique of the characters, as we don't know what she will be capable of as the film develops. And she expresses a lot of emotion, but all of it is held within, and that makes her not only mysterious, but really capricious. This film is maybe the most difficult films of Aronofsky for me to comprehend, and I have to admit I haven't watched Pi and I haven't watched Fountain. I watched Requiem for a Dream and I watched Wrestler. I have to get around to the rest of his work. But Aronofsky is, without doubt, one of the most talented directors of the last decade at least. But here he is vastly out of his element. With The Wrestler, most of us, Westerners at least, have watched wrestling and sometimes laughed and admired their countless shenanigans that at times is labeled sport and at times entertainment. But most filmgoers are not going to have gone to ballet or have a deep understanding of it. And as such, we don't expect the details of the art as we might with a film centered on wrestling, boxing, or football, but this film delivers none of the intricacies of ballet. And some people are going to say that no film is responsible or must dwell in the details of the craft they're set in. But Black Swan is kinda different. First of all, Leroy consistently haunts Nina about the imperfections of her Black Swan. Her inability to be flawed, her lack of necessary aggression, talking about how Lily is better prepared for this swan, but none of this is actually shown, at least clearly. Aronofsky would have done better showing Nina attend a performance of Swan Lake. performance on Lake, so that the audience can gain at least a little insight into this world. In its current state, it is quite certain that this was written by authors who had or screenwriters who had no deep knowledge of the ballet world and just wanted to create a film based on acting and storytelling and not really be very decisive in the details of this art. And that's fine, if the film was mainly an acting film, like Winter Bone was, I would have no complaint. But Leroy and Nina's interactions make this much more than a character study. And with some study, it could have successfully turned to a limited study of Swan Lake. Leroy's complaints of Lily is confined to her lack of ferocity, aggression, and inability to let go. And this gives credence to the claim that these writers knew very little about the details of ballet performance, or were simply really uninterested to give multiple angles of the performance and the preparation for the performance. There's a lot of kissing, there's a lot of groping of breasts in the crotch area between Leroy and Nina, and it would be sexy if it were not part of Nina's preparation. And with this knowledge, these scenes become quite depressing, considering that these are the only advice she gains from her instructor. There needs to be more insight to Leroy's character than his unashamed seductions in preparing his ballerina. Sure, ballet is really sexualized, but the device and period of preparation must not all be sexual. My point is that there's no fault with giving these advice, with all this kissing between the instructor. Maybe this is all preparation. Maybe this is what ballerinas and their directors do. Maybe this is part of the real world. But I'm sure this is not all part of the real world. And there really is some salient advice that doesn't involve sexualizing the ballerina. This isn't it. That's what I'm saying. There needs to be more. And I really do think they could have done a lot more with this without making it so much sexualized. And even if it was sexualized, that wouldn't be a problem. But it's just the fact of let go and be free. Don't try for perfection. That's all the knowledge that Leroy has and really and gives Nina. There's not much more. And that's really the fault with this film at the moment, because it's not much more than that. It needs to be a little bit more than that. And they wouldn't have been paying to do more than that. They could have easily done a lot more with this than just making it so sexual and not giving really any salient advice. At least I'm just gonna leave it at that. There are a lot of directors that try to show paranoia and obsession in film, and there are a lot of people who cross the line. There's a line between dream and reality, and dream and fantasy and reality, and what is real and what isn't, and what is imagined. There's a lot of people who know what the line is, they don't cross it. There are people who cross it, sometimes for comedic purposes. For example, Luis Buñuel really crosses it a lot of times. But what is interesting here is Aronofsky does not only cross it, he really mocks it. He really mocks what reality is, and that's irritating when you notice the director not only crosses the line, but actually knows he's crossing the line, does it willingly, and actually mocks the audience. I really think this part of the later part of the film actually mocks the audience, and I'll explain in a minute. Lily's obsession is really good, Nina's obsession, is very well understood from all the physical injuries she suffered. But it's the paranoia that Aronofsky is quite inept at capturing. Aronofsky begins to play a horror game later in the film, which involves a monster with the body of a man having sex with Nina. These are the scenes that really makes me realize he's out of his element. Because this film didn't start like this, and it shouldn't have taken this form. It shouldn't have taken this form of a monster or a horror film in parts, because that's really not the spirit of it. This is a ballet film, and as much as paranoia might affect it, it really he tries to actually, I think, kind of shock in a certain parts and horrify the audience, and it just doesn't work in any way possible. And actually, there are scenes that are very effective, that I think he actually messed up, and if he hadn't messed him up, it would have been very good. For example, there's a scene where Lily comes to Nina's apartment, and she takes her out for, a night out, and they drink, but Nina, being herself, she's really not into drinking, she's not really into partying, but you eventually see her get into the spirit of it, and she enjoys herself. And there's this sex scene involving Lily and Nina, and you really think, wow, this is interesting. But rather than you find out the sex scene didn't happen later on, but this is the interesting thing. Rather than say to us, oh yeah, this was just the paranoia, this was the obsession, and she obsessed about this other performer, and she was paranoid, and she imagined the sex scene happened, you find out this was probably the cause of drugs. So actually, that might have been a good case for paranoia, but now it might be just drugs. So you see, it becomes insulting, because even the good things aren't good anymore, because they're not the effect of her paranoia. There are a few scenes that really offended me about this film, and not personally, but when I say offense, I mean in the sense of what this film could have achieved and what it failed at, or what it could have aimed for and it really didn't, and it aimed too low. One example would be between the. I kind of think the director didn't show us what should be real and what is real, and when he does show it, he really fails. We know that Nina is paranoid. We found it out. We kind of get that Lily's after her. She wants her performance. She wants to take over the performance. If Nina is incapable of performing, or if she happens to miss the performance, or she's sick in any way. And Nina realizes this. And you see, this is fine. This is a paranoia setting in. Her thinking, oh, Lily's after me. Lily's after me. She wants what I've achieved. But where this film gets it wrong is during one specific scene near the end, where Nina corners Lily, and what happens is a fight. So Lily and Nina fight, and I'm gonna give something away here. So if you don't want to hear it, just pause 1 minute later in the video. So Nina punctures Lily, and when she pushes her into this large mirror, and then she punctures her with the broken shards of glass, and then she sees, oh yeah, I'm in deep shit right now. So, but she needs to perform in minutes. So she pushes Lily's body into this small room and just leaves her there. And you kind of think, oh, if she doesn't help her, she's gonna die. And later, when she runs in the room, she sees that from this room, there's like blood seeping out. So she thinks, and the amount of blood you think, oh my God, Lily is dead. So Nina covers the door towel, so the blood isn't observable for anyone